everybody, and thank you for joining us here today, here in the hotel, and also to everybody who's joining us online today. Before we get started with our session, I'm going to have some housekeeping tips for you all. At the back of the room, as you know, are the two fire exits, so in the case of emergencies, do leave your belongings and head straight out there. As you know, the goal of today is to network, and so to facilitate that, we've given you different lanyards in different colors. So just as a quick reminder, everybody in green is industry, everybody in blue is academia, everybody in yellow is SMEs, and those of us that are in black are IHI staff, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So, going on with what else is happening today, upstairs we have both the poster presentations and the meeting rooms, so make sure that you head up there. The poster presentations are going to be ongoing for the entire day, and you will have the ability to book meeting rooms using the whiteboard that is also available upstairs, so make sure you go upstairs and check that out. As you're building your consortia and having discussions today, we will have virtual lounges open on the Brokerage platform tomorrow. So you can actually bring people who might not have been able to join today into some of your discussions and continue your conversations. So make sure that you check that out and make sure that you're signed into the Brokerage platform for that. Now we're going to get started with our panel. Today's panel is called Going for Gold, and it's tips from past winners. So you will be able to join the discussion on Slido, and we're going to be hearing from our panelists about their experiences as being part of winning projects and their tips for designing a winning proposal. So thank you very much. Now, would you like to welcome our panelists on stage?
So good morning, everyone, both you in the room, I see it's quite full, and also online. I'm Niklas Blomberg, the Executive Director from IHI, and I have a really nice panel here with me of people who's been involved in a lot of IHI projects, and so I hope you're not the slightest intimidated by the Going for Gold title. So we have Maria Duterte, who is the head of, or the executive director of EUPATI, the European Patient Organization. We have Mark Turner, who is the CEO of the C4C Foundation, which came out of a very successful IHI project. And Mark is also emeritus professor in pediatrics from Liverpool University. We have Scott Vagers. I think you call yourself project designer, but I think you've been involved in building numerous consortia for IHI and many other European funding stream. We have Anna Maria Sismadia, who is the head of European External Funding and director at GE Healthcare. And we have our own Elisabetta Vaudano, senior or principal scientific manager at the IHI office, who've been chaperoning many projects, both to a start and to completion. So please welcome them all. And so all of the panelists have been, of course, in your shoes before, trying to build consortia. They have successfully won both IMI and IHI grants. And so I hope we'll have quite an interactive conversation. We have roaming microphones here in the room. And for everyone online, we have a Slido. And I think the QR code will come up on the screen. Yeah. Right now. And so if you want to ask questions, then now we'll leave the QR code up. Then you can log into Slido, and I have a little tablet here with the questions appearing. And so we'll kick off with just a few general questions. I think I'm going to pick up a lot of the points that you highlighted in his presentation yesterday, and sort of get a reaction from the panel on many of these critical points of building a proposal. And so while we're having this conversation, do have a little think about your questions. We have plenty of time, and so we'll come back with the Slido questions in a few minutes. And so with all of that, maybe we should get started. So, Anna Maria, I think I might direct the first question to you. So, we say that IHI projects should be ambitious. They should go beyond the state of the art. But you've been involved in quite a few proposals from the industry side at GE Healthcare. How do you think about this, and how do you sort of set out to build the state of the art?
I think any technologies goes beyond the current scientific state of the art must be ambitious by nature. I think the question is how far we should push boundaries within one project. The challenge lies in find the proper balance, ensuring that the innovation is ambitious enough to deliver valuable and impactful outcomes by the end of the long-term project. Meanwhile, we need to remain accessible and adaptable and avoid both overcommitment and underestimation of the outcome. So this is the major point, I think, when we start to prepare a project. While the ambitious lies at the academic part, the industry has acknowledged how the initiatives and the ideas and the insights from the healthcare should be implemented, and how can we deliver this cutting-edge technology to the real life.
Okay, thanks a lot. Mark, I'm going to ask the same question to you. I mean, you've been looking at this from the sort of researcher, academic and healthcare researcher perspective. So how did you think about that when you built C4C?
We look to have as broad a range of healthcare professionals as possible, and in our case we work through national organisations, but there are learner societies, there are groups that are ready to do the implementation. It's a question of moving beyond a few key opinion leaders or a few experts into a broader mechanism for that innovation. And every area has its ways of doing that, and it's a question of doing that landscape analysis that we heard about yesterday, so that you are talking to people who've got a validated ability to move things forward. So for me, the state of the art is not just the science, it's the social aspect of it as well. Have you got the communication pathways? Have you got the links with the people who are actually doing the work on the ground to persuade them? Because this is change management. You need to get buy-in for the people who are going to implement it and not impose a solution from above. So as well as scientific state of the art, it's that social aspect and community aspect I think is important.
Okay, thanks a lot. We have some drilling going on in the building, but I hope you can hear us. Elisabetta, so this is often a key question in the evaluation panel. So
yes.
How do you...
Yeah. Because, and I think that actually it can be different depending on the project, depending on the scope. And also, I mean, one thing, let's say, is ambition, is the fact to be really ambitious, and the other one is going also beyond state of the art. I think it's also two different aspects. And the ambition is also taking a good advantage of the public-private partnership, taking advantage on the fact to create, for example, what we used to call also critical partnership, the fact that you can really reach to stakeholders that normally maybe you could not reach. And then the ambition just to create a very powerful partnership can be a really, really important aspect. And so that I think is something that really the evaluator appreciate, to see that that the applicant make an effort really to engage, and then by engaging this is also they can demonstrate really that they will innovate in the system that we are living with, so in ecosystem. So that I think is something that is very important for the ambition. And then the state of the art, indeed, clearly applicant need to demonstrate that they know their field, that they have done the groundwork, that they fought and analyzed and know what it's about. For example, we have a lot of information on the past project that we had launched in IHI, and we recommend applicant really to do a bit of homework and check, because that would be important, especially for this call. But not only the IHI and IMI project, but of course the most general landscape that will be relevant for a specific field. So I think these are two different aspects that are equally important, and that will be evaluated as two different parts.
Anna Maria, I see you're keen to respond to this.
Yeah, I mentioned it's very important to find the balance between the ambitious and the state of the art, because the scope of the project definitely will define this balance. Because at the end, we would like to deliver something which would be feasible and accessible, and we need to consider the ambitious level in the project. To be able to deliver something at the end from the private or the industry part. So, yeah, it's very important to find this balance.
Maybe this is so. Oh, Maria, you want to comment? So please.
Maybe just a brief comment to also mention that, in my opinion, the ambition and the state of the art should be also based on the unmet need of patients, and that patient centricity should be part of these discussions. Why is this innovation needed? What purpose does it serve? I think those key questions should be there to start with.
I think the adaptation has two different points of view. One of would be the technology implementation and the feasibility of the implementation. The other is the adaptation by the patient and the healthcare professionals.
So this might be a good transition to Scott. I mean, you've seen the formation of many consortia and trying to bring together quite diverse voices. So how do you work to define and then align people around a clear unifying objective?
Well, I think, first of all, I want to say about the ambition aspect is that we tend to overestimate what we can do on our own and underestimate what we can do together. And that really plays a role, because what you see often there's a very easy default response when you're bringing people together to say, oh, that's not going to be feasible. And there's been a lot of projects I've been involved with where we said that, and then 5 years down the road, that's actually feasible because things are changing so fast. And actually, you can solve problems amazingly fast in a consortium. But I think the important thing is getting back to the point about, what's the unmet need, is really beginning your process by thinking about what's the problem you're trying to solve. More importantly, aligning on that problem. And of course, everybody's trying to improve the lives of patients. That's a very broad problem. But there's often more detailed, focused problems. And getting everybody aligned on that, the little possibilities start to pop out as to what you can do. And often sometimes people say, oh, wouldn't that be great? It tends to be more ambitious. And then the energy just goes up. And then next thing you know, you are putting together an ambitious proposal.
So next I'd like to explore, so we talk about patient centricity and we talk about cross-sectoriality in the IHI program. And so I'd like to explore those words a little bit. And so maybe we start with patient centricity, Maria. So how do you think about what makes for good patient involvement in the proposal? And what do you think about deep, meaningful involvement, which is the wording that we use in our texts?
Indeed, and patient centricity doesn't mean that patients are in the middle and everyone else is around them and kind of pointing finger. They are part of the circle, they are part of the team. And so good patient involvement means that co-creating with patients, not just for patients. And I would really challenge the consortia to go beyond tokenism, kind of the ticking the box approach. Maybe I can go off script and just ask here in the audience to raise hands. How many of you have been involved in projects or consortia proposals involving patient organizations? So it's already happening, and this is really, really positive. So today, it's no longer the question, should patients be involved, but rather, what is a good quality patient involvement? And there are many ways of learning how to do this even better. So I would say really focus on understanding who the actors are that you are talking to, who are these patient actors, patient organizations, their networks, really sort of even studying these networks, how are they connected, who do they represent, what are their interests, and having a dialogue and relationships even before there are calls and proposals, involving them early, giving them time to provide their input. Patient organizations have many many other priorities too. And so do not expect good quality input to your proposal if you give them 2 days of review time. I have more points, but I will bring...
I see that both Mark and Scott are eager to respond. So maybe Mark, because you built this pediatric network, which is a very difficult thing to do.
Well, it's everyday life for pediatricians and families. So I think not just is it necessary, but the big question now is how. And as Maria's suggested, there are professional ways of doing it. And it's not just a question of finding people who want to talk, but giving them support, training them so they understand what everybody else is saying, and training everybody else to make sure they understand what the person with lived experience or the family with lived experience are saying. And there are groups that can help that, and UPATI is one example. This is another very broad-based example in rare diseases, and we work with the European Young People's Advisory Group Network, people who've built up decades of experience of eliciting in a meaningful way what people are trying to say. And then there are people who have done it many times and can be influential members of senior boards, but you also need to listen to people with lived experience from day to day, and that needs to be blended into the design of the consortium, but also the design of studies and identifying outcomes and so on. And all of that can be done professionally, but those people need the resource and need to be brought in very early in the consortium so that they can have the influence that they need to give the voice to people with the right lived experience.
And Scott, I know many years ago you designed this patient game in an IMI project. So maybe a few thoughts from your side.
Well, I want to even go back to the very beginning. One of the very first IMI call topics was I helped to put together and was partner in the project UBioPred. And we brought patient organizations in, and we thought, well, we'll give them some budget. It turns out that was at the time an unusual thing, but it was one of the best things we did because we had patients in the executive board, we had patients in every work package call, and they really they were real partners in this way. We even wrote a paper called Going Beyond Tokenism, so that's a nice term you used. And I remember one specific instance where it was a big, ambitious clinical study that we were trying to do, and it was going slow. We were in the consortium meeting. And one of the fathers of a child with asthma, who was part of the patient panel, stood up in front of the room and said, "Come on, get a wiggle on it. Just get moving." And that inspired everybody. And uniformly in those meetings, the participants, the researchers, rated the patient presentation sessions, the patient involvement sessions, the highest. So I think it's very powerful and very important to keep patient organizations, but also patients as partners.
Elisabeth, I'll let you react a little bit. You've seen many consortia.
Yes, and indeed, I'm very pleased with the fact that indeed there's been a big evolution. I can see in all the year that we've been in IMI and IHI that people have really realized much more the importance of the fact that the end users, which are the patient, but can be also the doctor, so this was a point that was also touched yesterday, need to be involved because they will be the one that have to deal with the innovation. So if the innovation will not be useful for them, they will not be used. And therefore it's very important that they are involved from the beginning. And I was recently at a workshop of Alzheimer projects. And it was something that was said there by the person with frontotemporal dementia that was there. It said, never assume, ask. And that I think was a very powerful message. And I think it's extremely important really to consider the fact that they need to be involved, that they need time. They should not be the last that get involved after you involve everybody else. And just to try to think again in a powerful public-private partnership in a collaborative way, which are the different ways that also they can contribute. And give the time, consider that they are patients, so they are not people that are well. So consider also this.
Maria, I see you want to react.
Yeah, so I think also from UPATI's perspective, as we are the European Patients Academy, and we see capacity building and training as key part in enhancing patient involvement, that there can be a smart way of building this into a project as well as a capacity building exercise, sort of for all the partners involved. And I have a very good example from an ongoing IHI project called READY, where we are partnering in, where capacity building in about patient involvement is a work package and a task. So the entire consortium is being trained while working on the project itself about what it means to involve patients meaningfully in that project, but also overall. And there are 8 active patient organizations as partners in this project. And we have also designed work package specific work plans that define what patient involvement in each work package should look like and what are the KPIs, and there are going to be reports coming out of that. And I also think that we should document both the successes, but also the challenges around patient involvement. Every project is now trying to find their own way. There are very good examples here, good advice, but every project stands on its own. But also a challenge maybe to IHI to gather some of this experience, best practices, good guidance for the newcomers and new consortia that are starting, that they don't have to start from scratch. And they can be also trained, and we can all learn together.
Thank you very much. So I think with that, we're going to open up for questions for the audience very, very soon. But I just wanted, before we do that, to explore, we also talk about cross-sectoriality and bringing together expertise from different sectors, whether it's different industry sectors, but it's also research, healthcare, and other parts of public organizations, such as regulators. So maybe I'll start again with Anna Maria. How do you think about cross-sectoriality when you construct a consortia?
I think the IHI has huge benefit to collaborate with public members, and always the scope of the project will define the members from the cross-sectorial area. We can, definitely, it's a huge benefit to get information from the healthcare professionals, and then they can explain what they need and how they would like to use the outcome of this kind of project. We have 2 different ways regarding the IHI project. I think we can say that there is a certain topic when we focus on a specific area. And we can, on the other hand, we can establish an ecosystem or a comprehensive high-level vision around the patient care pathway or patient solution. And both of them will define the cross-sectorial members who should be involved to the project, and each of them will have a specific role. And during the conversation, I think we can find the proper alignment between us, and we can accelerate the process. We can deliver the best outcome of this kind of project. And this is how we can ensure the best impact after a long-term collaboration through the IHI program.
Thanks. Scott, I'll move on to you. I mean, it's not always easy to bring together all these different sectors and with different priorities, different drivers, but also different working habits. So how do you think about that when you create consortia?
Well, I think about it in it's a win, and then a win. Because what you need to do is, build the project in a way that provides value to what their perspective is. And industry may be quite different than academia, but you can find ways to synergize. The third win is getting back to the patient engagement, because how can you do a win for patients as well? So thinking in that sort of the triple win kind of mentality is the way to do this. And when you bring people together, you have a great power to be creative and find these kind of solutions. And so that's what the way I think about it. But the other thing to think about is that when you go different sectors, different disciplines, it's a different language.
Yeah. Scott, can I ask you to keep the microphone closer? Perfect. Thank
you. When you go from different sectors to different disciplines, it's a different language. And so that interaction is really important, because you need to learn to understand each other, right?
So, Anna Maria and then Maria. I think everyone is burning to comment on this. So, Anna Maria. You go.
So I think it's very hard to find the synergy between the different languages, as you mentioned. But based on my experience, we can see that somebody needs to drive the project, and somehow this kind of alignment will be established by the different members, and maybe we can say that the industry or the private member will accelerate the progress in the project. But it's a huge challenge and achievement when we can find the common interest and language.
Okay. Maria, I saw you were burning to comment.
Thank you. Indeed, speaking the same language. And what we are asking in these cross-sectorial teams for you to do is very challenging. There's no way of, we shouldn't deny that. It's not what we do in our daily lives. We work within our, let's say, own silos, but IHI projects bring us all together, and this is challenging. And it takes an open mindset. So it takes a specific, let's say, courage to step out of your comfort zone and try to understand what the other person is saying. It's almost like you are learning Chinese and you're through your first courses, and then you really are trying to understand and then asking questions. And here I think we've been seeing from the patient side very encouraging examples, especially through education and training, that patients are also now very active and can understand the language of researchers through programs like Upati's program, but also patient organizations that have been constantly upskilling their members around medicines R&D. So I think we are almost there. We can work together, and we have very good examples thanks to also IMI's and IHI's constant effort. But I really like the last comment about leadership, and this is not to be underestimated. When you are forming a consortium, the leadership is key. Is as important as in business leadership. It needs strategy, vision, very strong vision, and if people are not, let's say, standing behind that leadership, that consortium will not work. And I've seen, unfortunately, some of these examples as well. So maybe we can discuss a little bit more about the qualities of that leadership that's required.
I see several people wanting to comment. I think Scott, first you, and then I'll let Mark say a few words as well.
Yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit about the whole cross-sectorial aspect in that you don't need to become an expert in the other discipline or the other sector, but you should gain a degree of literacy in that field. And I think a great example, Nicholas, is data science. I think it's almost imperative that researchers have a literacy in data science. They don't need to be a bioinformatician. But if you're going to communicate with other sectors and other disciplines, you need to be able to understand how to talk to them. But I also agree the leadership thing is very, very important when you're building a proposal.
Mark, I mean, I wanted to explore the sort of the second win of Scott's 3 win-wins. So how did you think about the win, the sort of industry academia win-win when you set up C4C, the pediatric network?
Yeah. The first component was time. And for me, that's the thing that academic leadership needs to pay attention to and set aside vast amounts of time to make these things work. It's not something that I could do on top of a day job. I had to pull back from many other activities. Yeah. And I think that's what academic leads need to be prepared to do to make it work. The second part is having a vision, but also paying attention to the mechanisms by which that vision is going to be implemented. Because vision can become a bit separated from real life. And it's about having a vision and then making sure everyone has a lever that they can pull that's a win for them that promotes the vision. So if you're trying to, it's about dissecting down into all the possibilities and only choosing those which are going to be successful, but which also get buy-in from all the partners. We started off with 12 different things that we could offer, 12 different services we might be able to offer. Ended up with 2, because they were the ones that everyone could contribute to and everyone could benefit from, rather than being somebody's curiosity. So it's about moving into that, what can I do to help you, rather than what am I doing because it's interesting to me. And doing that in an open, honest space, and realizing that some people are going to be disappointed some of the time, in the interest of having something that works for everybody when it's needed.
Interesting. Elisabetta, some reflections.
Yeah.
You have seen many proposals successful and not so successful.
So there are so many things that I would like to say, so I will have to try to focus a few points. Well, first of all, I couldn't agree more on the fact of the leadership and the fact to have the public-private partnership reflected at all levels, so not only in the science, but also in the governance of a consortium, so that people really work together. I heard also once a coordinator say, yes, and a project of IMI, IHI type is like herding cats, so be aware of that. So you need really to have some people that have the right personalities. It's not for everybody to be a coordinator, so it is really, really important for the success. And then also very important to things that to bring a consortium to fruition of the type of the IMI, IHI type, takes time. So consider also when you think about the length, the duration of your project, the fact that you will have a very nice proposal on paper, then you have to transform it to reality. This will take a bit of time, and take the time so that you have everything in place and you really have everything as a people working together, the good atmosphere, the good mechanism in place. So take that time, and also towards the end, because often we say, okay, a clinical study that ends at the 6 months 60, that is the end of the project. When is the time for the analysis? And also think about that, because you will live again, be everybody together, and that agree where you go with your analysis, what you want to get out, and of course what you want to do afterwards. So I think this is extremely important. And then cross-sectoriality, I mean, the healthcare system is cross-sectorial. Innovation has cross-sectorial. So also, and if you look at the scope of this call, we also say it's pre-competitive, because we want to see that people, even if they have a very specific innovation, can really embed it in what is the system that this innovation will have to go in, and therefore think about how they could, in this way, help all the healthcare system to get better and progress for the benefit of the patient, of course.
Thanks. So we're going to move on to... So for those in the room, there's a bit of noise here. I hope it's audible online. So we're going to move on to questions from the audience. I'll start with the Slido question while you're getting yourself ready. So there is a great question here. So what three bits of advice would you want to give to a new consortium starting where none of the members of the consortium have worked together before? And so who feels they want to take on that first? Scott, I think we'll start with you.
I'll cheat a little bit. It's 3 pieces, the same piece of advice: interaction, interaction, and interaction. Whenever we've been in a consortium and somebody says, oh, this work package isn't going well, I ask the question, have they been meeting? And invariably the question is no. And so meeting and talking to each other it gets all the things we've talked about already on the table. So interaction, that's the key thing.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Anna Maria?
I think the scope of the project also can drive the communication and the interaction between the between the different partners, because if the project is quite exciting, everybody wants to proceed something, and this is the easiest way. And sometimes we are struggling to keep the interest for long term. This is the other challenge.
Yeah. Mark, can I?
I'd add one of the interactions would involve eating and drinking, because that kind of social activity really bonds and these days it's easy to have a Teams meeting which serves some purposes, but actually the building up the new culture of a completely new organization does need face-to-face time, and it needs face-to-face time which isn't doing work, but which is just sitting in the same room and learning about each other.
Yeah, Maria.
Yeah, just to add, to learn about each other, but also what are the strengths and weaknesses of each other? What can you contribute with, and what maybe another partner can do instead of you? And so it's a really sort of transparent meeting, and being open about your own organization, what you can do really good and what maybe not so well.
Yeah. So what I hear, it's plenty of time before the call opens and the call closes. So if you're building a consortia, do take that time and invest in relationship building and not only the scientific part of the consortia. That's what I hear. Elisabetta.
I think it's extremely important also the fact to have face-to-face meeting, really to try to get together physically, because there are a lot of signals that they don't go through Teams. And also I think what is very important is do not brush the problems under the carpet. And keep them for later just because you want to get the grant or you want to get the money and get going. It's better to have everything open in an honest way to create a real good networking and a very good team working, to have trust. That's the point, builds trust.
So we're going to open up if there's any questions in the room. I see one in the back. I would need yes, much better. I see a couple of hands up in the back.
Thank you so much for the discussion. Following up on your comments on leadership and also finding the balance, sometimes when you, especially for coordinators and forming a new consortia, you want to be innovative, you want to include, many expertise and many new techniques, but that also stretches out the budget. So how do you find that balance of, how far you can go and how to limit the amount of partners or the amount of contributors to your consortia?
Oh, that's a good question. Who wants to take that on? So maybe, Mark, I'll give it to you. You had that challenge very...
Yeah, I think I've shared this thought before, Nicholas, but academics at least tend to promise 120% and deliver 50% and carry on in a sustainable way about 20 or 30%. I think we should start with that in mind because there's going to be an attrition in what we can achieve, partly because of feasibility, partly because of science, and partly because people get bored. And so knowing that you're not going to get everything done, and then being strict and having some criteria, well, this is the biggest unmet need, this is supported by the families, this is something we can do because we've done it before, or the innovation process we've done before, even if the innovation is new. And trying to join the dots of things that have been possible, and then accepting that you can't do everything that people want to do, and in that kind of team way that we've been talking about. And it's just, we can't do everything, and that's the starting point.
Yeah. Scott?
I want to give a caveat to what you said, though, because yes, it's true for academia, but there's a certain segment of academia, the young career investigators, when they get engaged and they tend to do the extra things, and I've seen people, their whole career was built out of a consortia because they have a big stake in it. And that's one thing to think about. But your point about the fact you can't do it all, and there's tons of opportunities that pop up during the course of a consortium or a project, but don't put those on the table. Do something about them, even if it's just having your PhD student start a little project with somebody else to get the ball rolling, because those small little projects are what lead to something much bigger down the road.
And if I may, on that point, Scott, I think you said it as well yesterday. So in IHI, we think about excellent science as the starting point for impact, but it is important, and I know that many of our consortia publish a large amount of very, very good papers. So it is a good opportunity also for young investigators in the program. So I think we shouldn't forget that. I think there was a second question at the back.
Yes. I'm Michele Calabrò, Director of Euriga. We work with regional and local health authorities. So maybe to further complicate the puzzle, I think that's another category of stakeholders that might come really handy in terms of IHI project, because when it comes to implementation, to knowing the market, and then solutions and innovations that are developed in IHI projects, that needs to end up. It's also important to involve, the authorities that have the control and the funding budget for accepting, let's say, for the uptake of those solutions. So, of course, this is something that it's happening more and more, I think, in IHI, which is excellent. But I think there's still a long way to add that additional piece of the puzzle from the beginning. So I wanted to understand, as an organization from our side, how we can facilitate that, and if there are any good examples of how happened in the recent past, maybe. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. So who want to take that? Maybe, Mark, can you say, you built a very large clinical trial network. So how did you engage the sites, and how did you get the sort of joining up of forces?
Yeah, we kind of created our own version of what you've just said by making sure we had representation in each country, because we are united in diversity, and the country the member state is the natural, legal and linguistic and cultural unit of analysis for many of these discussions, although the regions and land are so and can be important as well. But it's finding the right people in each of those settings, and sometimes they exist already, and I think that's really important to find those groupings, be it for HGA, be it for science, be it for clinical practice. Those groupings do exist, and I think people will save themselves a lot of time by doing the right landscape analysis and finding the right people who can do the work. And I think that's then up to each of those other groups to present a trustworthy, verifiable, quality control sort of face so that people know what they're taking on. You then bring in a completely different set of cultural discussions, as we've heard, so that people need to know that maybe their goals aren't going to be met completely, or maybe they're going to have to change their way of working, and perhaps that's more than they're prepared to do. So there has to be a realistic understanding of that, and then spending lots of time. And we spent lots of time visiting each of our national affiliates before, during, and after the project, because as well as the consortium having those relationships, the people, your internal users, the end users, you need to have those relationships with them as well. And again, that takes more time, and lots of just eating and drinking together in ways that build on those social relationships. The science tends to look after itself. It's the social bit that needs effort. But from outside organizations, it's being plug and play, having credentials that people can recognize quickly, and then living up to whatever it is you promise to do. Because those realistic promises, I think, are the currency that we can all work with.
So, Elisabetta?
Yeah, maybe just, let's say, also go back to practical, to people that have to write their proposal. And so there is this section that is also called sort of a pathway to impact. And just to think about the fact that, all the engagement with all the different actors should not only consider as a partner and in the consortium, but to also consider who are the actors you have to engage when you have to get really to the next step that probably will happen after the end of the project. And there is something that really you have to describe very well in your proposal, and where you have to think about what is the next step. And it's all thinking about, having the ends in mind when you start your proposal, and then you create your strategy, including all the strategy indeed to engage in a proper way. So we will have also to indicate clear activity that you have in your work plan to get to this stakeholder engagement properly, and then get to the next step. So that is also very important that you think in when you write your proposal.
So I'm going to take a few questions online, and Anna Maria, I know there are about 38,000 medtech and health companies in Europe, and I'm going to ask you to speak for all of them. So, so I'm sure you're going to love this. So what does industry look for in desired collaborators? So if you could happily speak for that 38,000 companies.
So regarding the industry involvement, and as I mentioned, the outcome is very important for us. So we need to take our commitment, and then the commitment level will depend on the project and the scope of the project. Sometimes we focus on the certain issue, and we are looking for academic partners who can accelerate our efforts on deliver a new technology or state-of-the-art solution. Sometimes we would like to participate academic huge consortia creating high-level vision and ecosystem. Our commitment level always depend on the outcome and what can we receive through the project. Not just the collaboration, but the research activity, the outcome, and the commercializable materials. So for us, it's very important to find a project which can perfectly fit to our development pipeline. And we are looking for partners who can collaborate on our vision regarding the future health. And we are participating project for sure, and sometimes as industry we are trying to lead a specific consortium. The approach from our side are quite different, but always we are looking for partners who can support our vision.
And we have quite a similar question here from the online audience. It's also a lot of those 38,000 companies are, of course, SMEs. And so how do you successfully bring SMEs into a consortium and make them thrive? So I don't know who want to take, maybe Anna-Maria and Scott, and then we open up.
I would like to go back to the question regarding the budget. And it's quite hard to engage SMEs because of this situation. And from our industry side, the our commitment level will depend on the members and the willingness of the SMEs involvement.
Yeah. Okay, Scott.
Yeah, I always think of SMEs or any company, but mostly SMEs. It has to meet their development goals. Right? I mean, a research project is for research and development.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want it just for the revenue, and that's not a good way to be. You need to say, because if you think about it, if someone's going to pay 100% of your research costs plus 25% indirect, that's pretty good as an SME. But if you want that to be your sustainable revenue, that's not going to work because there's always delays in the payment, and 25% overhead is just about covers your costs. So trying to think of what they need for their development goals is key.
Okay. Elisabetta, from your perspective, you've seen
yes, indeed. I think it's important also when thinking to engage SME, of course, they are the engine of innovation, so that is fundamental also, and it's great to have them involved, but again, get them involved in the right way, and consider that the project are a long-term commitment, so they have to have the right position in the consortium that reflect the fact that they can then commit for so long. Maybe they can also be only participate to an activity for a certain period. I mean, this has to be considered case by case, but just think that, for example, if one wanted to coordinate a project, is really require a lot of muscle, a lot of energy, and a long-term commitment that can be a little bit maybe challenging for an SME, simply because as they are, I mean, for their nature, they are in a continual evolution, and things can change quite rapidly from one moment to another. So just to a reflection to see what is the right way to engage in an IHI partnership.
But on the other hand, their truly benefit is their flexibility.
So that's, yeah, some good advice there. We're going to open up again. I see a question here in the middle. And then there is another one at the back, so please.
Federica Zanca from the European Innovation Council. Thank you for the discussion. I would like to connect to the question on the SME and what you said, Elisabetta, that SMEs are the engine of innovation. So as you know, at the European Innovation Council, we do foster innovation through many SMEs. I have about 300 in my portfolio. And the question I have, how could these SMEs be linked to IHI initiative? Is there any way we can create synergies between the different programs?
That's a great question, Elisabetta. You can get to start.
Of course, yes. The answer is what we would like to do. Then the thing is just that there are many different ways, and so I think that is something that we can discuss further. And Niklas, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else. I think mean, these events are excellent, and I think it's also, as Elisabetta said, I think from my part, it's about the timing, making sure that perhaps when they are a little bit more mature, it's easier to engage in a large purpose-driven consortia. And maybe on that side, I don't know, Mark, Scott, Anna-Maria, if you want to reflect on, you had SMEs in the projects you coordinated.
Yeah, from the academic point of view, I think it's an example of the literacy that Scott was talking about, that I think academics do need to learn what SMEs are and do, and that range of maturity, so then you can ask the right questions of the people that you're working with. And that is a little bit of homework, I'm afraid, for academics. More reading to do, as we learned yesterday, because there are things which are commercial reality for SMEs which most academics haven't come across unless they've spun out something themselves. So I think that it's learning about the context and learning about the reality and then having the conversations and then being specific about what you take on and what you offer so that everyone is able to deliver what they're being asked to do. And that just comes from time and having a bit of knowing what the jargon means.
Scott, do you have any good examples from the consortia you've been involved in?
Yeah, you think of good examples. Well, I think part of it is, when you think about like EIC funding, maybe meeting your business goals. Like an IMI project is, like you said, more purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. But anymore, like a good business has a vision, and they're building the community. So I think taking that mindset that I'm in this because I'm building networks and connections. I think an example was from the Dragon project. We involved a small startup out of the UK, which I'm an advisor for, so I don't want to, but there they actually got engaged in helping the analysis, and that helped the company because they needed to build proof that their analysis tool would work. Mm-hmm. So there's a mutual win-win there. But they were also part of the community. They're building these relationships between different, and I've seen lots of companies, SMEs, with their work in the project, make connections that then go on. So I think the key is it's not the immediate, business goals you're meeting. It's the long term, and it's collaborating for the sake of collaborating.
Yeah, thanks. We have another question at the back, and I should say it's not only questions. You're also welcome to contribute with reflections from the audience. I know there are many people who've been involved in many projects. So please.
So Gibran Rubio, Polar Lake Institute. There's basically two questions related with SMEs and so on. How realistic is to integrate a consortium with only SMEs, or is really needed a big company to be involved, also for the risk for the SMEs to get involved in this type of projects? And the second one, you were talking about more than 38,000 different companies. And for big industries, it's easy to go to the webpage and find the R&D pathway and see more or less which direction they want to go, but not for everyone. So I don't know if through IHI could be like kind of database where we can really easily find which is the R&D goals for the different companies, so then we can find partners easily.
So I think the first question was really, is it realistic to form a consortia without any of the big companies involved? Elisabetta, this is related to the in-kind, and so maybe you and Anna-Maria will touch on that.
Yeah. I mean, the point is that one has to reflect when you create a consortium that indeed in IHI we have with the 45% minimum eligibility criterion also to be eligible to get to the evaluation, but that doesn't end with that, because the 45% need to be kept for all the duration of the project. If a project then doesn't have it, it doesn't stay alive, let's say it. So it is important to think that, again, consider the business model of the SME. Will they be all there after 2-3 years, or something will have happened? So, of course, we have to consider, and indeed, you have to consider this in the risk, just again, to go to the nitty-gritty, but there is also an element that you need to reflect when you write your proposal, that you have to consider all the different risks that you will encounter in the implementation of your project, and one is, of course, to keep the consortium alive and the project alive, that is keeping the 45%. So, of course, it depends on the different type of SME and the different type of actor, but think about it that you want to, if you want to be awarded, then of course you want to be able to maintain and get to the end of your project, so think about it carefully.
And I think there was Anna Maria.
Regarding in-kind contribution, the industry is able to provide the proper amount of it, for sure. And but on the other, and since the industry has a huge vision that they would like to proceed and get through the consortia, the SME can deliver a specific solution which can fit to the high-level vision. So somehow they should be invited for sure, because they are quite flexible. They have R&D approach to create a specific solution and more innovative outcome.
Yeah. So on the second question on the SMEs, or the register of SMEs, I'd like to just make a plug. The members of IHI are the European Industry Associations for pharmaceuticals, for medical technologies, medical equipment, and biotech, and all of these have, I think, amazing materials on their constituencies, on their membership, and I also know they provide extensive support to the members when they want to apply to the program. So I would encourage to explore. There is a booth outside with our industry associations, and I know I've seen the representatives in the audience, so I'm sure they're happy to help with that. We had another question here in the front.
Well, Mauro Placchi, I would like to point it out to inspiration that you can come outside the consortium. First of all, think that every time you have to set up a feasibility. So it is not simple to gather together and breaking the bridges and so on. You have to also to simulate what will happen in realities. The second thing that I would like to point it out, it is what is happening also with the venture capitalism when they invest in a startup. And I have worked with some of them, and what it is very interesting is that, of course, what Marco was pointed out, it is a reality. Let's say university, despite the strong hands of the university scientific officer, they tend to promise too much because they are not educated in certain procedure, how to run a project. So in conclusion, this is very important to see how these people manage the control of the money.
Very, very good point. Thank you very much. I think we have a couple of online questions, which is really about how do you build your consortium and how do you best spend the time between now and the call deadline, and how you can leverage your important or your existing network. So maybe a few, before we move on to another theme or another topic, so maybe a few thoughts on how do you best use the time between now and the deadline to build a good consortium. I don't know, Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think one group that's not been mentioned so far is project managers, and of course they're absolutely central to a successful project. I think, and you need to work with a group that has done this before. If the university or the company has effective project managers, then use them. Otherwise, there are a number of SMEs that provide this service very effectively, and I think working with a group that's done it before that can hold your hand and make life easy, so that the coordinators can focus on the content and the social bits and not worry about the procedural bits, delegate them to someone who's done it before. I think that's an important part, finding a good project manager in-house or externally, and then focusing on the application form and what's actually in the application form, because the prompts there do lead you into good management practices. And so focusing on what you need to do to answer those questions, and spending as much time together as possible online or face-to-face. And yeah, we dealt with this as a fairly full-time occupation for 18 to 24 months before the application. So it's not something that can happen quickly. It does need maturing. The ideas will change, because people will promise one thing and deliver something else. You do have to account for some of that night's move thinking during the preparation. And so allowing as much flexibility as possible, as much time, I think leads to mature applications.
Yeah. Maria?
I agree with that, and also some of the best consortia that have approached me sometimes with ideas have been able to show me on one slide or in one sentence what the purpose of the project is. And I think that is a key. It's almost like building a new business. You should be able to do the elevator pitch for what you want to accomplish, so that you can sell that idea quickly and easily. You can transmit the idea fast.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Scott, I see you burning to comment.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that particularly for an IHI at this stage, for this call, you need to have the concept and you need to be working with your industry partners, because that's the biggest barrier, is getting the in-kind aligned for the proposal. And that can be very difficult. Sometimes it goes very quickly, but it's a very big challenge. And the key thing is to have a good concept and then look for that win-win-win.
So maybe that's a good segue. So I'd like to explore some of the practicalities, and we're going to come back to the audience with questions, but some of the areas where we see a lot of challenges for consortia, and which I think is really strategic, you have to think them in from the beginning, is what you mentioned is the in-kind contribution, both the number, how much do you get, but also what type of industry capabilities do you bring into your consortium. I'd like to explore data a little bit. We also often see projects struggling with data. And finally, I'd like to come back to the long-term, the scalability and the operations of the outcome after the projects. But maybe a few thoughts on the in-kind. You started, Scott. I don't know, Anna Maria, do you want to comment on the in-kind bit? So, I mean, speaking for the large and diverse group of companies, how does industry think about in-kind?
Actually, I would like to start with the initiative done by the industry members. So how can we use our network? When we initiate the idea, we already have partners are in mind, and we are looking for the unique items which can fit to the project and can accelerate the progress of it, and can deliver a unique outcome of this kind of consortia. Regarding the in-kind, this is the hardest part of the project preparation. Sometimes we start with the budget. Let's see what would be the proper in-kind to create a feasible project. Sometimes we start with the task and to define the scope of the proposal, who should be invited to create a valuable project, and then we can allocate our in-kind based on the value of the proposal. Both can work. But for us, it's very important to see what we receive through the project, and how can we utilize the outcome and the collaboration. Meanwhile, the main scope to create a valuable solution which can be implemented in the daily healthcare system.
Elisabetta, you've seen a lot of this in consortia.
Yes. And of course, now talking about this type of broad call that we are launching now, of course, it will depend a bit on the, let's say, the different type of consortia. We will have consortia that are starting from the industry, and there will be, they have already a concept, and then of course we'll be looking for different partners that they get to engage to get there, but they can be also instead consortia that start from the public side, and then they want to approach, of course, industry to create a public-private partnership. And in that, I think, first of all, of course, the value proposition. It is important to come with a clear value proposition. The second is that it could be much more powerful that you come and you already can show that you have a nucleus, that you are talk about all the different actors that need to be included in the consortium. If you just one and then you say, okay, I want to talk to you, and then we go out and look for other partner, that it would be probably a little bit more challenging to get to the final line in time. And also consider, of course, that industry will have many requests, and of course it will be not possible to accept all of them. So be in good time, don't come the day before the deadline, because unfortunately that probably you will not have much help, simply because people will be already engaged. And it takes a long time also inside industry to mobilize the in-kind contribution. It's not something that they have in the drawer and they take it out. So it is always a reflection that you need to think and think strategically and go there with a value proposition in good time and really make your case a strong one.
Good. I'd like to move on to data. So a lot of our consortia are incredibly data rich. It's very difficult to do advanced medical research today without a large amount of data. A lot of our projects are also building resources or bringing together existing resources across countries. So what's your experiences there, and what is your best advice to build this in from the beginning in the project? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Scott, I'll point to you, and then Mark.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is to, again, getting back to that understanding data science and having the right structure and thinking about it ahead of time so that you actually, the data is reusable. I'll just give the example from the UBioPred project, which was one of the first IMI projects. We had this discussion, we should use the standard. Oh, no, that's too much to implement that. And I would tell you, now that data has been used for 12 years after the project. Everybody that's used that data, do that again, they would implement the standards no matter how long it took. Because as the data ages, the people who really know the data set are gone. You don't have a good data dictionary, you don't have a good structure. It becomes much more challenging to make use of it. And I know that's been sort of said over and over again over the years, but it's still a challenge when you bring it up. Make a good data structure, a standard, a data dictionary. There's still a resistance to doing that. And now that's more important than ever before.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I think this is another area where dialogue and discussion and face-to-face interaction are so important, because everyone brings different jargon, everyone uses the same words with different meanings, and data scientists have the same ambitions as everybody else, global domination and a bit of money, and they need to be brought in as in the same way as everybody else needs to be brought in to be realistic about what they're going to get out of it and what we're going to get out of it. And that is just time and literacy, and that needs repeated effort because of the changes in the field. And how you talk to AI, how you're going to have AI policies in the future, that becomes important as well. So there's a governance, information governance aspect that we need to be thinking about.
Anna-Maria, then.
Yeah. All the project suffers because of the data, and from the industry part, it's quite hard to manage the data dictionary and the database and the data handling. All the project includes the prediction AI as a main requirement these days, but only federated data is available, and it's quite hard to push the academic partners to provide data, and we totally understand that their willingness based on the established data base, but regarding the prediction AI, the centralized data would be the benefit to use to test the algorithm. Meanwhile, all the algorithm is trained on federated data without any diverse data set to validate it. And all the regulation, ethical point of view must be considered during the project preparation. And after, when the project will start, we need to account with the issues getting data, which is absolutely understandable, but it takes a long time to proceed all these tasks when we start the project.
Elisabetta, what common mistakes and problems can be avoided by good planning at the proposal stage?
Well, everything, I would say, simply. I think you really need to plan and really consider carefully what you put in all the different sections, and also don't think in box that are closed, because each section of the proposal will talk to another one. So it's very, very important that the evaluators see that you have really thought thoroughly and carefully on your proposal. And then, of course, coming back, for example, to data, there is a clear, in the excellence, of course, you have to consider that you have a good data management plan, that you have considered the fairness of the data. And coming to the project, I mean, I saw many projects that had indeed challenges because they promised a lot, you have a lot of data in your proposal, and then when you come to the implementation, you have to spend 3 years to get access to the data, and that doesn't help to go forward. So this is very important, that when you put something in your proposal, you are completely sure that you can indeed then use them in the project and write, and the evaluator will look also at this aspect. And then, of course, consider that so excellence, I mean, in the sense to have a good concept, the methodology has to be top. You have to, and that has to consider all the different aspects, which including the data aspect, of course. You need to consider that you have all the different expertise that you need to implement the different methodological approaches. And then again, also very important, think with the end in mind. So think that what you want, if you want to get, and then to the future, which will be implementation, deployment of what you have created, or scaling up, and what is the actor that you might be, that you need, and that maybe they are not beneficiary, they are not part of the proposal, but they will need to be engaged in this pathway.
We have an online question here saying, regarding data, many projects struggle with data interoperability and governance legal aspects. Is it essential to include a strategy on this in the proposal? I think you can answer in a word, Elisabetta. Yes, I think that's really, if you think that through, that's very good. Maria, you want to add something here?
Yeah, this is also, I think, important for patients. Data, good governance, transparency that builds trust. And so do not assume that patients are not interested in these questions also. And I think they should be included in these conversations throughout the project. And just coming back to patient involvement, sometimes I have the feeling that there are certain areas within the project where people assume that that patients do not want to get involved. It's a bit too complex. And there's this sort of kind, polite invitation, well, there is this document, maybe you can review it, but I know it's very complex. But let's not assume that anymore. Patients are experts. And we should be able to also learn the language to communicate these very complex data science topics also.
Thanks. So we're going to open up to the audience again. I see there is a question here in the middle.
Good morning, everybody. Luis from DIA, and it's quite, linked to what we're discussing here. So first of all, I'd like to invite everybody. So next year, we do have a session during our annual meeting where we're bringing regulators, HTA, to talk about data, how to create a data ready for regulatory reasons. So, and within that context, so we are trying to create a framework that be able to be plugged in the different IHI projects, which are currently also part of. So glad also to partner with the other initiatives. And as a segue of that, so the in-kind contribution, as we were talking about like data and so on, is also a new kind of venture also to get in-kind contribution, especially for health tech, large kind of cloud companies, and here the question to the panel, how we're seeing this right now. Because we do have like larger providers like Amazon, Google, which not necessarily are creating like the a lot of questions right now on where the data safety. So are we looking towards like moving it for the project base and support by IHI on cloud-based in Europe? So is that the guidance that we're moving to the future, and how to involve those different companies in the project?
Great question. Who want to take that on? So I can take on the formalities. I mean, in Europe, there are a set of laws and rules that govern the use, the access, and the long-term storage of data. Is GDPR. During the lifetime of the projects that will be submitted into Call 12, also the European Health Data Space will be a reality. And of course, you have the AI Act and so on. I think the only requirements we have as a funding body is that you comply with all relevant laws and regulations. And when it comes to data, it's not very different to tax or environmental law. It's a set of statutes that you will have to comply to as an organization. But we don't have a bias towards one organization or another, if that's the question. It's based on fulfilling all the relevant regulation. I don't know if anyone else want to comment on that. I think it's maybe a technical. We had another question at the back.
Good morning, Robert Rogowski, Clean Note. I have the question regarding planning in some uncertainty. We prepared the project for accelerating clinical trials with use of artificial intelligence, and having in mind the length of grant assessment and contracting, and then a few years of implementation. We hope that we will implement this project with ACT-EU, with EHDS been implemented in those countries that we plan to implement the project. So today we think that we know 60–70% of the problems and how we want to solve that. But under these new regulations, EHDS, we believe that we will have some new ideas, but it will depend on the details of the implementation of EHDS in a given geographies. So the question is, how should we plan the project, especially the budget, if more or less 1/3 of the project is not really very clear to us how the future will look like in 3–4 years?
That's a great question. I don't know who wants to take on this question.
Well,
Elisabetta, do you want to start?
I can try. So, first of all, of course, you cannot have a magic ball and a crystal ball and know the future. So that's obvious. And also our project, in any case, a research and innovation project. So there need to be a little bit of a vision. The important thing is that you consider a strategy that and how to get there. And maybe if there are some uncertainties, engage it, include it in your strategy. Think about the different option and think about what could be a good plan if things will go one way or the other. So I think the important thing is that you really have a vision, a concept, and a strategy that you make very clear in your proposal.
Mark?
Is the magic word amendment? Because I think you can make up A, B, and C. If this happens, we'll do that. If that happens, we'll do that. And then you can move the budget around in a well-rationed, well-reasoned amendment.
Scott?
Absolutely.
I would say they might... Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, again, our projects are doing research and innovation. They will evolve. They are not cut the moment that they sign the grants, then everything will be fixed in stone. No, because science evolves. And of course, it will be important and it will be possible also to shape the project as changes happen, to keep them up to date.
Scott?
I would say the magic word is milestone. Because you can put a milestone and say, we're going to make a decision at this point. And that's always good to connect that to your risk mitigation plan. And then you're building that adaptability into the project instead of having to go through months of amendment time.
Yeah. Was there a question here in the middle? Okay, no, I missed that. Okay, then we take one online. I think this is I'm sure there is a lot of people both in the audience and online who are thinking about this. So can you share some tips on how academic partners position their research to be relevant to the consortia? I don't know who wants to start. Scott?
Well, I think it's important to think about when you're positioning your research, you have the innovation value chain. And if you look at the grants overall, the whole thing is covered, from the EIC covering the transition into clinical practice or into business to really, but for IHI, it's more pre-competitive. It's sort of like in the middle of that chain, trying to solve bottlenecks. But I think if you position your research, you should try to position it across that whole value chain and be thinking, how do I go from my basic science all the way up into implementation? Because there's going to be opportunities along the way.
Mark?
I think the way to do that is to start thinking about which services will arise from the work that we're doing. Academic science is about, here's my idea, here's my paper, go and do something with it. Whereas getting to the the sharp end of the value chain and scaling up and having impact is about having a service that someone pays for. And someone's going to have to pay for it. The health service, out-of-pocket families, somebody's going to have to pay for what you're doing. So for me, it's about thinking ahead and what will services from my innovation look like. And it might be that you partner with a big company who's going to do that for you, or you might be thinking, how are we going to turn this innovation into something that people are going to pay for? So who's going to pay for it? What do they want? And how much are they going to pay become the really important questions that need to start from day one of, not just day one of the project, but day one of planning the project. You can't answer those questions, but you need to have a strategy that's going to take you there. And I think academics can position their research by thinking, what will other people pay for, not what am I interested in doing, which I think is a switch that I see academics making sometimes, but not making other times, or leaving till the very end of the project and suddenly scratching their heads, how do we scale up, how do we get impact? And then, they realize someone has to pay for something. It has to start at the beginning, and that pathway to service provision has to be central. And a good idea, no one's going to buy. They're just going to say, well, what next? And that thinking needs to start as you're writing the application, I would say.
Maria.
Yes, I would ask for also some maybe creativity when calling for academic partners. There are many disciplines that can bring benefit to the consortium. In the past, I worked with some social scientists, some behavioral scientists as well that have an interest in these projects and looking at the work from their angle. And also patient involvement is currently an academic interest for these disciplines. And so they could be working together with the consortium partners, also sort of evaluating how patient involvement works within that field and actually contributing to innovation in patient involvement in research through publications, through new models, and also looking into the return on investment. And this is really something I'd like to call for more in as a sort of side effect of the projects as well.
I think that's a great segue to the next theme I'd like to explore, which is after the project. And we're fortunate on the stage, so we have two examples of IMI, IHI projects that graduated into something long-living and possibly bigger. So Maria and Mark, so maybe in turn, in a minute or two, you can just describe the UPATI and the C4C, how you got there, what you do, and what advice you have for building this in from the beginning. So Maria.
Thank you. I get this question asked a lot. UPATI started as an IMI project 13 years ago, and now we are a non-profit organization. So a long journey, and also I cannot take all the credit for the success, of course. I've been with UPATI as a director only for 5.5 years now. I'd say sustainability thinking starts already in the proposal phase. There's no question of that. So it needs to be already sort of dreaming, thinking well ahead. And not everyone needs to be becoming an independent foundation like we decided to do. And I think this is really a conversation among the partners. They have to buy into this idea of sustainability and whether that really has added value to and public benefit and for the general public at large. Is such a player needed in Europe? Is there a gap that this initiative can fill? If not, the answer is then, well, maybe this is not a sustainability pathway. Maybe there's another way to take the legacy forward. But for us, indeed, it then resulted in huge commitment from all of our public and private partners. And then growing really the activity immensely, even in the past years, and really establishing the key vision that we had from the beginning, and that I'm really proud to say it hasn't changed. So the the cornerstones of our activity is still patient education and training, as was then in 13 years ago, when the world looked a bit different. I think 13 years ago also just the idea of patient involvement was really new to research. But so what I like to say when people ask me, so what are the keys to sustainability? I'd say it's a buy-in from the partners. Without that, there's no possibility. But also very clear why, and the vision. There has to be strong enough, because I think funding and comes then sort of as the second point. When you have that very strong value proposition, that catches support. But I will let my colleague here also add to this.
Yeah, so we had this continuation of the services after the project in mind from the very beginning. So we had a work package on sustainability that was working throughout the project, looking at scoping the market, looking to see who would pay for the services and what the services should look like. And we incorporated a Dutch stichting, a non-profit organization, 2 years before the end of the project, which allowed us to, don't tell Nicholas, but allowed us to use some of the project funding as incubator type money.
Watch.
But I saw the whole project as seed funding for something that would then become sustainable. And I think thinking like a small organization, like a venture capital funded group, helped us map out that pathway. But we have to remember that having a new legal entity does involve a significant overhead. And from the perspective of that organization, we spend 60–70% of our time on the process and a third of the time on the content, which is completely different from the project, which spends all of its time on the content and trying to refine the content. And there has to be that switch towards being a reliable, procurement-ready organization and meeting all the needs that payers have, be they companies, hospitals, that they all want you to fill in hundreds of forms, and you have to be able to do that quickly and efficiently, and that's an overhead, and you've got to generate enough money to pay for the service and pay for all the people to fill in the forms that allow you to charge for the service. And that isn't going to fit every service. There are plenty of legal entities out there already that have incurred that overhead to which you can bequeath your legacy. You can give your legacy to someone else. You can have somebody on the board, you can have some governance in place to make sure that they do what you want them to do. But it's thinking through how much it's going to cost and the reality that someone's going to have to take this on full time, and they need a finance facility, and they'll need marketing and all those things, which won't be supported when the grant finishes, and won't be supported by the grant, but still need to be generated on top of paying for the services that you're talking about. So all of that needs very careful thought, and the roadmap needs to be part of the application so that you can weigh those things up within the protected environment, because I think IHI does provide a very carefully constructed legal framework for people to have these conversations behind closed doors, which are much more difficult to have when you don't have the wrapper that IHI gives. So what's the phrase? Vote early, vote often. And I think it's the same for thinking about how to continue the services after the project finishes.
And maybe 2 words on what C4C is doing, actually, Mark.
So we provide 2 services out of the 12 we thought we might to academics and industry. One service is giving expert advice about the design of clinical trials and pediatric investigation plans, so that we can make sure that the people with lived experience and everyday clinicians and key opinion leaders can be heard during the design of protocols, so that protocols are acceptable in real life. And we work through 19 national hubs to site find, do feasibility, and support clinical trials when they're open. So pediatrics and ethical issues are our daily life. We're here to help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this went this was fun. It went very fast, so we need to start to wrap up. So I'm going to ask each of you for a final piece of advice. We have lots of good questions on how do you build consortia around leadership and how do you bring partners together, how do you find the in-kind, how do you develop long-term. So if you have one final piece of advice, what would that be in 30 seconds each? So Maria.
There was another comment that I had about public-private partnerships. So maybe the last point that I want to make is to really dig into that notion and what it means, because I think IHI gives such a wonderful structure to these projects, but also to then these sustainable organizations that I represent, that I think is a wonderful set for collaboration.
Thanks. Mark?
At some point, get ready to say no. You can't do everything. Do what you can, do it well, but pull back from some activities at some point.
When you're pulling together a proposal, there's 3 C's you need to think about. Concept, clarity, and content. Many people put content first, but it's concept that really matters. That's where the vision and the strategy comes in. You need to spend the time to work with your partners to get the concept right, focus on the clarity, then comes the content.
Okay, Anna Maria?
My suggestion would be that when you prepare the proposal and try to invite industry partner to collaborate on the project, the value proposition must be very clear, because it will initiate the clear answer regarding the commitment. On the other hand, from the industry part, project initiated by us, please be open to collaborate and go through on the project preparation phase, because it's the most challenging and interesting part of this kind of project.
Thank you. Elisabetta?
Well, I think, first of all, clarity, because, of course, it's extremely frustrating for evaluator if they have to read something that is unclear, that already make them go in a very bad mood, which is not really good for your proposal. But second is, of course, there is a lot of information, but please try to read it, and especially when you have to choose the topic you apply to, because we still sometimes see some application that come to a topic and we say, what on earth, why they have chosen that? And so read very carefully, because sometimes you just read the title. It's not the title of the topic, it's not the title of the specific objective, is really what is in there as a challenge, as a scope. So please be careful, because you could miss an opportunity. And again, so read, be clear, and thoughtful, of course.
That's an excellent point to end. So I'd like to thank our panel for the contributions. I hope you will end. So with that, we're drawing this plenary session to a close. It's time for a coffee break, and then you're all welcome to network. As Catherine said in the beginning, there are plenty of networking opportunities and tools available during this morning. Before I let you go, I just want to remind you that the Brokerage platform is open. I know that a lot of the pitches have been very, very busy responding to messages. And as Catherine said at the beginning, tomorrow we open up the Brokerage platform for online events. And that's tomorrow only. So that's a real opportunity to build on the conversations you started here. The platform itself will remain open for new registration and exchange of messages until the call deadline. So we will close that at the end of the call. But until you have submitted your proposals, that platform remains open. I also want to say that we do share news and updates, and in particular updates around the call. We are on a newsletter on social media, and so if you're interested in IHI or in updates, do subscribe. We are on Blue Sky, we are on Mastodon, and we're on LinkedIn. And I think you will find nice pictures in which to recognize yourself. And so with that, I have one final reminder from the organizational team, and that is that this room will be closed after this session, so do not forget any belongings on the chairs, because they'll be a little bit difficult to retrieve. And so with that, enjoy the coffee, and again, let me have a big thanks to everyone who's come to the panel, but also to our organizing and event team. I think they've done an excellent job, so thank you very much.
you.